Michael Della Monica. Welcome to the Workers Credit Union studios here at Fitchburg Access Television. And I haven't been able to say that since at least March. So it's great to be back in the studio doing this great content. And today we're going to talk about Governor's Council in Massachusetts. What is the Governor's Council? Well, there's 8 elected positions throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We here in Fitchburg and most of Worcester County are covered in District 7. And we have 2 candidates here. It's a rather peculiar situation. Jen Casey, the incumbent, vacated her position because she now works as a clerk in the Dudley District Court. That left a vacancy. The 2 gentlemen that I have here with me are seeking to fill that vacancy. However, there is no Republican that pulled papers in the race. Therefore, the Democratic primary, September 1st, barring something really strange happening, is going to essentially be the general election. So I have, to my left, I have Patty Rafferty, and to my right, I have Paul Depalo. And first of all, gentlemen, thank you for coming here to be part of this debate. And so just a little bit of background for Governor's Council, for those who don't know. As the name suggests, they provide advice and counsel to the governor regarding a variety of political appointments that he makes, whether it be to various boards, commissions, clerkships, and most notably, and what makes the press most often, judges. And so, very important role. What I'm going to do, I'll start with Mr. Rafferty, ask you, what inspired you to run for this seat?
Thank you very much, Michael.
And maybe tell the people, the viewers, a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Michael. So my name is Padraic Rafferty. It's a pleasure to be here. I actually grew up about 10 minutes right down the road, right up Route 12, just over the Fitchburg line. A little bit about myself. I born and raised up here in North County, graduated from public schools. I ended up going to Wentworth Institute of Technology, graduated there, ended up pursuing law school. I went at night, worked full time, graduated with my JD from Suffolk University Law School, along with my master's in taxation in law, which is essentially called an LLM. At the same time from Suffolk, first student ever to do that from Suffolk University in their 100-year history. And I then pursued, went to the district attorney's office, and now I'm in private practice. And what inspired me to run very quickly was, this is a great position where it's a part-time position, Michael, and it allows me to still be a practicing attorney in the courts every single day, and allow me to go into Boston and, if fortunate to be elected, vent and make sure we're getting the right judges and other individuals in the right positions throughout the state.
Thank you. Mr. Depalo.
Thank you. So my name is Paul Depalo. I'm an attorney. I'm a father of 2 daughters. I am a member of the Worcester Planning Board, and I'm also a former special education teacher who developed alternative programming for at-risk kids, kids with social emotional disabilities, kids who are caught up in the court system. And I'm running for this position, as I did in 2018, challenging the Republican incumbent who was mentioned earlier, because judges matter. They matter on issues that are so important to our society. And the reality is that judges serve lifetime appointments in Massachusetts until mandatory retirement at age 70. Your vote on council can have a real long-lasting impact on policy in this state. First of all, we need to do a better job in our juvenile courts. It's kids who are dealing with trauma and abuse living in our foster system, who are the kids who get referred to court for the things that, with the luxury I had of a stable home life growing up, I would have merely got grounded for. But once these kids are in the system, consequences for typical teenage behavior escalate and escalate until their education is interrupted, their opportunities are stymied, and really we're setting these kids up for a lifetime of incarceration. We spend 60 grand a year to lock someone up in Massachusetts. We could spend far less to give kids the support they need early to avoid that outcome. The other motivation that inspires me to run is that we've had an ongoing mental health and addiction crises in this state for decades. And yet, under this administration, we've been taking mental health experts off of the parole board at every single chance we get. We're down to just 1. That is completely absurd. It's not in keeping with what goes on in our criminal justice system, which is overwhelmingly folks with mental health challenges and dealing with addiction. And that's why we have sky-high re-entry rates. We need judges who are going to take advantage of diversion programs, which save money and lives. And we need parole board members who have that mental health expertise to deliver true justice and to make sure that we're doing best by taxpayer dollars. So I'm very glad to be here, and I hope to earn your vote in the September 1st Democratic primary.
Thank you, gentlemen. My follow-up question to that is Jen Casey, who served, and this is a 2-year term, and Ms. Casey served multiple terms as governor's counselor. Could you maybe point out one area in which you'd maybe like to continue what she may have accomplished in her role, and then one area where you think the role needs improvement? Obviously, you're inspired to run because you believe that the position is in need of some improvement or some difference from the way it was run previously.
Absolutely.
Not just a party thing, but maybe you have different ideas in general. So let's hear some of those. This time we'll start with Mr. Depalo.
Yeah, absolutely. So I challenged the incumbent, Jen Casey, in 2018. She had been there for 4 terms. And you asked what I would continue that Councilor Casey brought. And I suppose what it would be is a willingness to work together with the rest of the council to work in the best interests of the Commonwealth. But the reality is the reason I chose to run against the incumbent, the reason why as a first-time candidate everyone told me I was a long shot and yet we went to bed on election night not being sure of the results, is because I have strong disagreements with the former counselor on a whole host of issues. The former counselor is a Trump Republican, unabashedly, and so there weren't many areas of agreement that we had. I think that, for example, we need a counselor who's going to stand up for diversity on the bench. Massachusetts has the lowest incarceration rate in the country, which is awesome, but we have the highest Latino incarceration rate in the country, so the two things don't really add up. We need diversity on the bench. I don't think that's been there. We need more women on the bench. That has not been there. There hasn't been an advocate for that. We need more mental health experts, not only on the bench, but on the parole board. And my goodness, we need child development experts in the juvenile courts. So I will bring a totally different attitude to this position. You know, folks don't know what governor's council is, unfortunately, and that's why people don't know who their counselor is, don't know what positions they stand for. I don't think that the previous incumbents' values were in line with, certainly with not the Democratic primary electorate. And so I hope that voters, as they did in 2018, will see me as the sharp contrast who's going to bring Democratic values and who's going to stand for something on this council.
Now, you mentioned highest Latino incarceration rate in the nation,
Yes,
you said? Now,
in the nation.
Isn't that maybe more a focus, a product of demographics, though, whereas we have versus the different races or the different ethnicities that we have in the state versus, or do you see something more behind it?
I think you're touching on something that's very important, and that is the systemic nature of what we're dealing with. All right, judges and parole board members alone aren't going to fix systemic racism that's been going on for for centuries. Sure, demographically, we know that some communities tend to be lower on the socioeconomic status ladder than others. And yet that, to me, speaks to the fact that we need resources in the community and we need a justice system that's going to give people a second chance so they can get back on their feet. When we incarcerate children, it ripples upstream. When we incarcerate black and brown boys, it ripples upstream where we destroy neighborhoods, we destroy families, and then you get the outcomes that you're describing. So certainly we need judges who take a comprehensive, holistic view at this issue.
Okay, Mr. Rafferty, same question. What do you see as maybe a positive that Councilor Casey brought, and then what is something that you'd like to build on or change or even a criticism of what she's done?
Sure. Thank you, Michael. I think, myself and Paul being Democrats, I think we stand for a lot of the same issues. Quite frankly, there's a lot that are being talked about, but, there's specific numbers that, Paul's talking about. But I think in regards to something that, Jen did bring to the council, being the only Republican there, I've talked to a number of counselors that are actually sitting counselors, and they said she did work. She worked well with us, like Paul said. However, with that ability to work together, we have to make sure that the right individuals are getting around on the bench. The right individuals are getting in these positions. The way Ms. Casey left, I think there's a lot of disagreement. However, what I can say that I will bring is making sure that female candidates will be getting on the bench. I can tell you that I've spoken with a number of lawyers throughout Worcester County, being a trial attorney. And there is really no one advocating for minorities or females to go and apply. They're discouraged. They feel that by going in and applying, they're not going to get through the process. And in encouraging those individuals to get in there to apply, that's something I'm going to bring. Not only that, I'm going to make sure that we're going to get a female candidate in District of Superior Court. I can tell you that throughout the Baker and Polito administration, for specific numbers on these issues, there's been no female candidates nominated from the Worcester County area or District 7 area in the last 6 years. And I think that's something that is a huge void that we need in our courts. And being a trial attorney in both of those courts and district court throughout the county, we need a new candidate. There's candidates that are going to be coming up. I know the Milford's going to have an opening coming up at the end of the year. I'm going to be advocating to make sure that there's a female candidate that's going to be, that hopefully can get through the process. Like I said, at the end of the day, we don't have the ability to appoint. We're just simply voting on the nominations by the governor. So quite frankly, we want to make sure that there's a qualified person that's getting on the bench.
Do you believe that the governor is doing enough for outreach to female candidates? I mean, personally, I don't see an issue because I practice in the probate courts and there are several qualified and excellent female judges that have been through that system that I've gotten to witness. Do you really see that as a problem in Massachusetts?
I do. I'm not going to say who, but I did speak with one individual that couldn't make it through the due diligence part. And she was a female candidate, and she was really discouraged. And she said, "I've had a lot of conversations with a number of other candidates, or potential good candidates for judgeships, and they're just discouraged from applying because they can't get through the process." And that's, like I said, that's something that I cannot appoint. I cannot do anything, but I can definitely, if I'm appointed to the council, advocate for that, make that an issue, so we can get the governor's attention. So they're looking for diverse candidates to get on the bench or other positions. I think that the District and Superior Court are one of the busiest courts, quite frankly, in the county. So it's great that female candidates in probate court have gotten through with Judge Melia, Judge Tatro in the last couple of years. However, I want to see throughout all the courts throughout the Commonwealth, and especially Worcester County, that we're seeing a diverse individuals being nominated.
I'm glad we're talking about diversity on the bench because we also have not ever had more than 2 non-white judges in Worcester County at any one time. And around these women issues, I'm not stepping up proclaiming that I support women. I've been an active supporter of the Massachusetts Commission on the Status of Women, on so many organizations that have been working so hard on issues that include equity in the courts. And so, I'm glad to hear that that's an issue that my opponent appreciates as well. The Trump Republican who I ran against in 2018, just to make sure that the voters understand the choice here, my opponent is one of her biggest financial contributors. So I think we really need to look hard at where we stand when you're making your choice at the ballot box.
Well, Mr. Depalo, I'd let you follow up, and so I'll just let Mr. Rafferty follow up briefly as well.
Yeah, I don't know where the financial contributions come in. I mean, what's great about this process with the financial contributions is that they're public record.
That's right.
I don't really understand where that comes from. I have a number of union endorsements, and I'm proud to do that. And I can tell you that once you look at this, I'm self-financing a huge portion of this campaign myself, which I'm very proud of. I've worked very hard. I'm a product of a father who was in the unions. He passed away at a young age, and I had the only chance for me to go to higher education was to work and go to school at night. And like I said, my hard work, has been, I've been very fortunate, but my hard work, I haven't been able to get there with my hand held. I've had to work very, very hard. And like I said, I'm in a position that I am self-financing this campaign, so I don't really understand where that's coming from, but that's why we have public records.
Why don't we go to the next question? And because both of you have brought up points that actually tie into my next question. This is especially and I understand that your district, the 7th district, covers a wide swath geographically. Mm-hmm. Okay, I believe Ms. Casey is from Oxford.
Correct.
Okay, practiced in Southbridge, which is almost the opposite end of the county. Mm-hmm. And so it's a wide swath that we're talking about here. Specifically to those in the North County who are watching this, because we're Fitchburg, Leominster, all politics, well, that means Fitchburg and Leominster communities are especially watching us, and on FATV as well. We have a conservative streak that runs through this area. A lot of what I call on our regular show JFK Democrats. In other words, they are sympathetic to the social programs. They are sympathetic to giving people a handout. They do not think government is the enemy, but at the same time, they have a socially conservative streak. They are for law and order, they are for punishment for crimes, and they have obviously a conservative side. So what would you say, and what you've expressed is a lot of what I would hear ordinarily in a Democratic Party platform in terms of diversity, in terms of judicial reform that especially you had touched on. So what would you say to the voters of North Central Massachusetts, who make up a substantial portion of your voting bloc, who have a conservative streak? What would you say to them in terms of the types of judges you would put on to make sure that laws are enforced? We'll start this time with Mr. Rafferty.
I mean, I think right now with so many issues going on throughout, not just our Commonwealth, but across the country, there's going to be a common sense approach. Like I said, growing up here, my dad working at the Gardner prison, yeah, I think there's a lot of independence, and there's a lot of, like you said, old school or JFK Democrats. With respect to that, I think we want to make sure that these social issues are being addressed, but I think they have to be addressed in a common sense approach. And right now, I think there's a lot of individuals in the State House that are, and even like I said, throughout the country, that there's this rush approach. And I think looking at it from where my values are, there has to be a common sense, sit down, really argue it, and really debate some of these issues. I think that we've been pretty reactive with the State House in the last couple of weeks, and I think this is something, when we look at some of the reforms, education reform, that was 7 years debated. Even with the health, that was 5 years. Doing this over just a matter of a couple of weeks, I think there has to be a common sense approach with that.
Mr. Depalo.
I'm so glad education funding came up because it ties right into this job of Governor's Council. I spent a year organizing volunteers and working myself to gather signatures to get the Fair Share Amendment, the so-called millionaire's tax, onto the ballot. After all that work, folks all over the state gathering tens of thousands of signatures. I mean, I was up at Fitchburg Civic Days. I was at Johnny Appleseed Fest gathering signatures. And our Supreme Judicial Court shot that down so that the voters never had a chance to vote on it, and we would have much needed school revenue if that had happened. But, as far as North County goes, I spent a couple years living in Templeton, so I'm familiar with the area. I grew up in Shrewsbury. I've lived in Worcester for the last 10 years. I love this area, and what I love about it, you talked about the conservative streak. What it really is about towns coming together and communities coming together. I'm really proud to have the support of Fitchburg State Rep Stephen Hay, Leominster State Rep Natalie Higgins, and even when we talk about the liberal-conservative divide in the Democratic Party, when Natalie Higgins is one of our youngest state legislators, and I think works hard and does a tremendous job, when she first won her seat, there was a primary race against at the time, city councilor named Rick Marchand, and I'm proud to have his support too. So, I love coming up here. I love seeing friends. I regret that we can't be campaigning in all the community events that I did in 2018 and 2019, but. Certainly, I think that when it comes down to, you brought up law and order. The fact of the matter is there's not a single person on the planet who wants violent criminals on our street. We need judges who believe in that too, right? And we need to make sure that the legislature deals with sentencing guidelines and other matters, because a lot of times I hear folks complaining about someone who's, in their words, been let go by a judge. When in many cases it's not necessarily the judge's fault, it's the sentencing guidelines and the laws that the judge is working with. So what we really need is judges who will apply the law equally and legislators who will follow the intent and the will of the voters.
Michael, can I just
I'll let you each have a rebuttal. Go ahead.
Yeah, just to touch on that, instead of talking to people, I've actually been in there. I'm in court, and what's great about this position, my opponent was here 2 years ago doing an interview saying that he's looking for judges that both have prosecuting and defense experience. Well, quite frankly, I am the only candidate in this race with that, and I'm proud to say that. As a former prosecutor in the DA's office in Worcester, I had those difficult conversations with the victims. I didn't hear about those conversations, I had those. And those are something that you can't read a book or hear from someone. You have to actually live it and to really understand it. Not only that, I worked with the police officers. I worked with pro se defendants that couldn't afford an attorney. Those conversations to see what is justice, what are their issues, and then really at the end of the day, once I left the DA's office, I'm in private practice now, and I represent clients that have been charged with crimes, clients that have been hurt, clients with child custody issues, or clients with a license issue that could be the detriment to their job. I've had those conversations, and to really to live those, be on the forefront, be in the trenches, per se, in the court every single day. That's what needs to be brought to the Governor's Council, and that's why I think I'm a qualified candidate, Michael.
Okay. I'll let you close out this question.
If voters want an attorney, they have two to choose from, so that's the good news. I want everyone to consider something. Let's say you're in court, and you're before a judge, and your opposing party, their lawyer, voted to put that judge on the bench. I wonder how you'd feel. I wonder if you felt like you'd be getting a fair shake. I don't know that it is a asset to be in court every day in front of the very judges who you're voting to appoint. We can agree to disagree about that, but at the end of the day, if the voters want to choose a lawyer, they can close their eyes and guess, because they're going to get one.
Okay. Question that I want to ask specifically again to this area, because it's a topic that was brought up when we had a Register of Deeds race a couple of years ago here in the North County. Mm-hmm. It's a topic that was brought up by candidates I was interviewing for Register of Probate very recently. Mm-hmm. And I'll call the topic showing up to work. Mm-hmm. And Governor's Council, unlike Register of Deeds, well, actually Register of Deeds I suppose can be part-time as well, but Register of Probate, Register of Deeds, some people choose to work those full-time. Governor's Council is by design a part-time position. And so you both have other jobs related in the legal field. So maybe just tell the audience a little bit about what schedule modifications you intend to make so that you can show up for work. And I believe it's Mr. Rafferty's turn to start.
Yeah, so right now I work at Eden Rafferty out of Worcester. We have approximately 9 attorneys in that office. And we've already sat down with a firm before I even announced and talked about that potential issue. Fortunately, and I know Paul can agree with this, is the Register of Deeds, you can practice law on the side, but the Governor's Council doesn't make that type of money that the Register of Deeds does. So This is really just a public service seat. But looking at that, I think that I have a lot of great people around me. I can make those accommodations, and I'm going to come prepared every day, ready. And I can say, Jen Casey, talking to some of those individuals that are sitting in the council, and even just actually, I had a conversation with who has endorsed me, was a retired appeals court judge, Mel Greenberg from Worcester. He was a district superior and appeals court judge, now retired. He actually said, I saw Jen and she actually showed up very prepared, and that's what we need. We need someone ready and prepared. And like I said, with the law firm that I'm at, and I can make those accommodations. I'm not a one-man show. I'm not sending my own letters. I'm fortunate, but I do have a big caseload, but we have attorneys that can cover that, because I want to make sure I'm representing District 7 to the best of my ability and prepared every single Wednesday.
Mr. Depalo.
I've been prepared to take this job for 3 years, and I certainly hope that the voters give me a chance to do so. I think, there's some counselors who approach the job with that solid work ethic and take it seriously. There's some who don't. Unfortunately, because it is a part-time position that, perhaps the average person would have trouble kind of navigating in their lives, what it means is that sometimes in other districts, attorneys can drop 6 figures into their campaign account and call it a day. And again, because this position is so under the radar, they can slide by and have an ego boost and have a resume bullet point. The reality is that we need to be very serious about vetting these judges. Not every counselor meets with the nominees ahead of their hearings. I intend to do that. I intend to get to know the judges. For the folks who don't know, before an appointment gets before the Governor's Council, a potential judge, they've been already vetted by something called the Judicial Nominating Committee within the Governor's office. So the council never sees an unqualified candidate. The council is seeing candidates who have been vetted by their peers. And so the real issue is their experience, their perspective, and the passion and values they're going to bring to the bench. And I think that's true for a counselor too. So again, I'm asking for your vote on September 1st.
So, like I told you, the time flies by fast. We have just under 5 minutes left in our time here, and I'd like you to each have a couple of minutes to directly address the voters. Mr. Rafferty went last in opening statements, so I'll have Mr. Depalo go last in closing statements. So 2 minutes. Mr. Rafferty, make your case to the voters of North Central Massachusetts and beyond.
Thank you very much, Michael. And again, it was a pleasure coming here. Great to be back, back home. I've been visiting here, North County, about 3 to 4 days a week. And it's been great. Quite frankly, folks, this is what it boils down to. I believe I believe the district needs is a qualified candidate. And what it boils down to is we need somebody who's in the court every single day. The issues we're talking about right now were potentially, or quite frankly, not on the forefront 6 months ago. Didn't mean they didn't exist, but they weren't on the forefront 6 months ago. And that's quite frankly why they call it the practice of law. The law is always changing. If I'm elected to the Governor's Council, I'll continue being in the courtroom. I'll continue seeing those issues. I'll continue looking for candidates to apply, qualified, diverse candidates to apply for these seats, not be discouraged, encourage them to. I want to be a leader for the bar itself in Worcester County. But when we look at the whole job in itself, we need someone who can look at it completely across the board, bring their experience, and have a resume. I think the best way I can say this is, if I read a book to how to fix your car, I don't think you would trust me to fix your car. You'd go to a mechanic who's been there and done it multiple times. And quite frankly, that's why I'm running, and that's why I'm running on my credentials. I'm the candidate who's been in the courtroom, continues to be in the courtroom, and will continue if elected to the Governor's Council. We want to make sure these issues are being addressed. I think me and Paul do share a lot of similar issues and to try to fix. But quite frankly, we need to know what the new issues are going to be. And I'm the only candidate that's going to be able to do that without just asking someone what the issues are. I'm going to be living and seeing those firsthand. So, respectfully, I'm a first-time candidate. I picked a heck of a time to run a countywide seat, and I know Paul, he can agree. It's been very tough over the last several months. Opportunities like this, again, thank you very much for inviting me, and I'd ask you for your vote humbly on September 1st.
Mr. Depalo.
So thank you again for having this show. It's very important, and it's great to have a low-profile race getting profiled a little bit. I am an attorney. Sure, I've been in state and federal courts representing Fortune 100 companies, but I think what really speaks to my personality and my values is the recognition I've gotten for my pro bono volunteer legal work, in which I've helped disadvantaged kids, refugee kids from other nations, secure the special education services that they need in their public schools, putting my legal training to work to better the community. And that's what I'm all about. Let me give the viewers a quick snapshot of the kind of systemic problems that I see. I once worked with a young man, 15 years old, had been living in foster care since he was 2 years old, bouncing around foster homes, bouncing around school districts, separated and reunited with his siblings multiple times throughout his life. He got caught stealing candy from a convenience store. He shouldn't have done it. But what happened was he was referred to the courts as a child requiring assistance. Conditions were put on his release by the judge, which is typical because the child comes back 6 weeks later for a hearing. One of the conditions was an 8 p.m. curfew for 6 weeks. I can tell you that a teenager who's already making bad decisions with no stable adults in their life is never going to meet an 8 p.m. curfew for 6 consecutive weeks. So when he came back to court, he was taken into state custody and put in a facility over an hour away from his high school. And he was being woken up at 4:30 in the morning to be driven to his high school in a van by himself. And when he got there, he wasn't ready to learn. He was ready to act out. And when he skipped class or told off a teacher, it wasn't just a suspension. It was back to court. These are the kids who end up in our system. These are the kids who end up incarcerated as adults. We need to give these kids a chance. We need judges in our juvenile courts who are going to understand child development and are going to put kids on the path of opportunity, not incarceration. I'm Paul Depalo. I'm an attorney. I'm an educator. I'm a father. I'm a Worcester Planning Board member. And I'm asking for your vote in the September 1st Democratic primary.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for doing this, and you've really helped the voters see what's in front of them to make an informed decision. So long for now.